Deep in the countryside of El Salvador, near the town of Tecoluca, sits a place that has caused a lot of arguments: the Terrorism Confinement Center, or CECOT. This huge mega-prison, built of concrete and steel, has become a symbol of the Salvadoran government's tough stance against gangs. Finished in early 2023, CECOT is more than just a jail, it's a message. It's a symbol of President Nayib Bukele's war on gangs. CECOT is far away from cities, isolated on purpose. This isolation, meant to make it secure, also makes it secretive. What happens inside is often a mystery, causing worry and questions from human rights groups around the world. The prison itself is massive, built to hold a lot of people. It was built quickly because President Bukele wanted to deal with El Salvador's gang problem fast. But this rush has also made people wonder about corruption and how open the government really is. CECOT was built for one reason: to hold people accused of being in gangs, mostly members of groups like MS-13 and Barrio 18. These gangs, which started in the United States, have caused problems in El Salvador for decades with extortion, violence, and murder. Thousands of suspected gang members, many arrested in huge raids under the government's state of exception, are now locked up in CECOT. The prison is way too full, holding more people than it was designed for, and this makes people worry about bad conditions. The government says CECOT only holds dangerous criminals, but critics say many inside are low-level offenders, people just caught in the middle, or even innocent people. It's hard to challenge being put in CECOT, and this worries people even more. The prison shows a complicated problem. Everyone agrees that gangs are bad, but the government's methods and the large number of people arrested have started a big argument about justice and human rights. Life inside CECOT is rough, very different from the outside world. It's incredibly crowded. Cells meant for a few dozen people often hold hundreds. Personal space doesn't exist. People are packed in, struggling to breathe. Even basic things like food and water are often hard to come by, and who gets them depends on the guards or powerful inmates. Sanitation is terrible, which leads to sickness. Inmates rarely talk to the outside world. Family visits are unusual, and phone calls are listened to. This isolation is on purpose, meant to break people down, but it also makes it hard to know what's happening inside, leading to worries about abuse. There are no programs to help inmates change their lives. It's all about locking people up, not helping them. Inmates have nothing to do, filled with boredom, fear, and not knowing what will happen. This makes people wonder what these individuals will do when they finally get out. Human rights groups have criticized CECOT since it opened. There are reports of torture, killings, and people disappearing, making people question the Salvadoran government's respect for human rights. The secrecy around CECOT makes these worries worse. It's very hard for reporters and independent observers to get inside, so it's difficult to check on conditions and investigate the stories of abuse. One disturbing event involved a satellite picture from Google Earth. Taken in March 2024, it seemed to show a big bloodstain inside the prison. This picture spread quickly online, causing anger and talk of a massacre. The Salvadoran government said the picture was fake, but it was later quietly removed from Google Earth, making people even more suspicious. Because the government isn't open, and because of all the disturbing stories, many believe CECOT is a place where human rights are ignored, and the law doesn't matter. The case of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia showed everyone how controversial CECOT really is. Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran citizen legally living in Maryland, USA, was sent back to El Salvador because of what his lawyers called a mistake by the Trump administration. He had no criminal record, and a judge had said he could be in danger in El Salvador. But the Trump administration said he was in the MS-13 gang, something his lawyers strongly denied. Shockingly, Abrego Garcia was arrested when he arrived in El Salvador and sent to CECOT on March 15, 2025. He spent several terrible weeks in the overcrowded prison before being moved to a detention center in Santa Ana. His case became a big problem between the US and El Salvador, showing the human cost of the Trump administration's immigration policies and the questionable human rights situation in CECOT. It also made people question what rights people have when they're caught between countries. The United States has been very interested in CECOT, but this interest has caused problems. The Trump administration, known for its tough immigration policies, thought about sending U.S. prisoners to CECOT because U.S. prisons are overcrowded and it might be cheaper. This idea was immediately criticized by human rights groups and some politicians, who said it would be like the U.S. allowing torture and ignoring human rights. People also worried that U.S. citizens, especially those from El Salvador, might be wrongly sent to CECOT. Despite the controversy, the U.S. government has continued talking to El Salvador about CECOT. Important U.S. officials like Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem have visited the prison. They said they were there to learn the facts, but some people think the U.S. is willing to ignore human rights problems for political reasons. The idea of sending U.S. prisoners to CECOT has started a big argument about justice, human rights, and what the U.S. stands for. People who support the idea, mostly those who agree with the Trump administration, say it's a practical solution to overcrowded prisons and a cheaper way to deal with the growing number of prisoners. They also say that sending U.S. criminals to a harsh place like CECOT might scare other people from committing crimes. But people against the plan, including human rights groups, lawyers, and some politicians, say it's a dangerous and wrong idea. They say sending U.S. prisoners to a place with such a bad human rights record would go against American values and international law. They also point out that it would be very hard to keep U.S. citizens safe in a foreign prison. This argument isn't just about laws and logistics. It's about what it means to be American and what values the U.S. shows the world. CECOT isn't just a problem for El Salvador. It has gotten attention from around the world and raised concerns about the country's respect for human rights and the rule of law. The United Nations, human rights organizations, and other countries have all expressed worry about the reports of abuse and the lack of transparency around CECOT. Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia's case made the world look even closer at CECOT, highlighting the possibility of human rights abuses and questioning if the Salvadoran government follows international rules. This international attention has put pressure on El Salvador to address the concerns about CECOT. But the government has mostly pushed back, saying the criticism is just other countries interfering and that its actions are necessary to fight gangs. This disagreement between El Salvador and the international community shows how hard it is to deal with human rights issues in a sovereign nation, and the complicated relationship between a country's politics, international pressure, and the pursuit of justice. CECOT is a powerful symbol of El Salvador's fight against gangs, its human rights record, and the rule of law. Its future is uncertain, just like the complicated issues it represents. What happens to the prison depends on El Salvador's politics and what the world does in response to the government's policies. Will CECOT stay secretive, or will pressure from inside and outside El Salvador force the government to be more open and accountable? Will the Salvadoran government address the human rights concerns, or will it continue to focus on security over justice? The answers to these questions are important for the people of El Salvador, the future of human rights in the region, and the relationship between El Salvador and the rest of the world. One thing is for sure, CECOT will continue to remind us of the human cost of violence, how fragile justice can be, and how much we need to find a better way forward.